Hello and welcome to another episode of Teaching Heroes, the educational podcast where I ask teachers, what does it take to show up every day to teach tomorrow's leaders? And today I have another fantastic guest on my podcast. I have Andrea Garner, who is the leader of teaching and learning at Novo Education Space. Andrea, thank you so much for agreeing to be on my podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Novo Education Space. We were just saying, I said, you're in the Illawarra, and you said, no, we have 4 campuses. And I said, let's just record the podcast and let's just find out all about Novo Education.
Yeah, so I currently work at Novo Education Space, which is a independent school, and we have 4 campuses. So the main campus is in Wollongong, and then we have a campus in the Shoalhaven in Nowra, and one in Vincentia, and one in the Highlands, the Southern Highlands.
Okay, and so does your role go across all those 4 campuses?
It does, yeah. So I kind of guide the pedagogy and practice that we use, and am there to support the teachers in resourcing, as well as doing the NCCD funding, or the Nationally Consistent Collection of Data funding models, and keeping us compliant for our registration and accreditation.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Novo Education Space, because it's an alternative educational pathway, is that right, for students?
Yeah, so we are an independent school, but we are a registered school. Up until this year, we offered the ROSA accredited certificate and the HSC certificate, but we made a decision to stop doing that because we didn't think it best served our students in finding future pathways, because it's very concentrated on academic pursuits and assessment tasks, and pulling kids through information that we felt was quite bound to the classroom, right. Where many of our students are in educational recovery, which means that they have had large periods of time outside of education for various reasons. Sometimes their experiences in the mainstream education haven't been very positive. Sometimes they have family circumstances that have led to different impacts and barriers to education and learning. And so we now offer something called ASDAN, which is an international accreditation. And it's challenge-based, kind of project-based learning would be what most people would be familiar with. And the students go through some challenges. They develop a portfolio of evidence and artifacts to show what they've done, and then they earn credits, and those turn into awards or micro-credentials. So we also have short courses in everything from hair and beauty to construction, vocational computing applications, and just about everything in between.
Yeah, how big's how many students are there across the?
We have about 93, I think.
Yeah, across the 4 campuses.
Across the 4 campuses, that's correct.
And then how many teachers would you have per student then in that?
We have a maximum class size of 12 students, and every class has a teacher and an SLSO, or a student learning support officer, as well as we have a really big focus on well-being. So we have an entire well-being team that is led by Monique Piper, who is a mental health nurse and the leader of our health and well-being. And so each student also has a well-being officer that is assigned to them, that helps with their individual learning profiles, setting goals, connecting to outside agencies, collaborating and co-designing future steps, transition plans, making sure that families are involved, and kind of guiding them along the way.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the experiences of some of your students that they might have had at other schools that would, or in their family life, that would lead them to come to Novo? Yeah,
so Novo, we don't have any specific criteria for entry, so you don't need a diagnosis or a referral from a medical practitioner or anything like that. And we try to reduce barriers as much as possible. So unlike most independent schools, we also charge no student fees. And in addition to that, we provide all of the educational materials required to do your program and be successful. So many of our students have come from trauma backgrounds in their personal lives, which could range from anything from domestic violence, out of home care, or being bullied in the mainstream environment. Quite a lot of the students have had gaps in their learning because of different situations, anxiety, depression, whatever it might be, that has led to them having long absences from schools. And as we all know, much of the mainstream philosophy on managing absences is to make you more absent through suspension. So that's not particularly helpful when you have a student that has anxiety and then is made to be absent and then gets further and further behind, which makes that re-engagement in education even harder. So we are quite flexible. We have students that would be on attendance plans, which we're working with them and their families and the professionals that are packed around them to try to re-engage them in a way that is really positive and strengths-based, and at the pace that the student can actually manage. So whilst we do want to focus on growth, and we do offer, because we are a registered school, we do still have to do the core subjects in stage 5 and the pattern of study in stage 6. But because we're registration only and not the accredited HSC or ROSA, we only have to focus on the outcomes and all that mandatory content. So what that means is we can really tailor the programs to the things that are going to be the most useful to our student population. And we have a little bit more time and flexibility to focus on that well-being. And really, we like to say we're in educational recovery, because that's really what we're there to do, is teach the young people that they are good learners. And this is how you learn, and you can be successful in many different ways. It doesn't have to be an A or whatever. So we everybody's on their own path a little bit at our school.
I have to say that sounds really exciting as an educator, to not be bound to a certain content, but to, appreciate that there are outcomes we would want students to achieve at that age, but that it doesn't have to be through the Jane Austen novel, or as much as I love Jane Austen, but it doesn't have to be, through that content. It can be tailored more to the interests of the students that are in that class. It's like a dream.
I mean, like, everybody knows that you learn by making meaning. And so when you have, let's say, relatively streetwise young people, for them to make meaning out of something so abstract as a Jane Austen novel, perhaps. So we'd still do novel studies, but we try to do novel studies in a very different way, and we pick novels that are going to have some relevance and relatability to our young people. We also then have to focus on the language conventions, which might have been missed somewhere along the way, because numeracy and literacy are far more important in success in life than, English studies and mathematics studies, if you know what I mean. So that flexibility in applying number or, literacy ability to access the things that are in the world is so important. But we also value the creative pursuits, because there's a lot of therapeutic benefits to those, as well as a certain thinking style that comes along with creative pursuits. So yeah, we try to give our students the opportunities to shine wherever those come.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, as a drama educator, I'm with you on that one.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of benefits to teaching the arts. Yeah, so, and as you say, that educational recovery style, I mean, it's just really struck us. As soon as you said that the first time, I was like, wow, what are we doing to our students that they need to be recovered?
Yeah.
What do you see? What are the gaps that in mainstream schooling what are we missing in mainstream schooling that, leads students into an educational space like yours? Not that it's I mean, it sounds incredible, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's a massive question.
Yeah,
and I probably have a lot of personal opinions about that.
I'd love to hear them all.
I think because I have spent a lot of my career in mainstream settings, but I have also spent half of my career in alternative type settings. So I guess the thing is that the education system is built on the industrial design. So let's produce products that are all standard and that sort of thing. I feel that as an educator in the mainstream system, the focus shifted off of actual authentic learning experiences and onto getting through the content. And so that put a lot of pressure on teachers to not do those creative, invigorating learning experiences that they might once have done, and rather push through. And when a student has another challenge in their life, for example, like anxiety or there's something going on at home and they miss even one lesson, that can be enough to put them so far behind, and there's just no catching up. And I think that anxiety starts to pile on quite quickly, and when it's spread over a period of time, that starts to impact your identity as a learner, that starts to impact your social connections. It starts to impact all kinds of things. And so when students come to us, one of the key factors that they choose our school is because of the small class sizes. Because they have a personal connection with their teachers and their SLSOs, but also they're not one of 30 in the class, 200 in the year, 1,500 in the school, or whatever it is, and I think mainstream schools are starting to go, oh, wait a sec. This isn't working. Like a lot of those mainstream schools are now opening well-being hubs. And they are busy places. And that has to tell us something as a society. If our young people can't handle what's going on and the pressures of what's going on in those classes, the assessment tasks, and you have to score this, and you're working towards an ATAR, which is one moment in time that sums up your 13 years of education, which is madness in my mind. But, all of those things are enormous pressures. And I don't think that they highlight the strengths and the diversity of an individual, let alone a community. So
so much in there. It's funny, like one of the things my dad was a school principal and did his PhD, and one of the things he says about the industrial design was that it does follow that industrial design model, but if we compared a school to a factory, it would be a failing factory because for some reason schools are, I mean, they're not, teachers are, I mean, I know teachers are, I love teachers, but let's say schools are okay with graduating a student with an A and a student with a D, but there's no way a factory would be okay with a car that doesn't work, right? We're okay.
That's right. Oh, you're a car with only 2 wheels.
Can't read, but that's fine with us.
Off
you go. There's no, and I think you really hit the nail on the head with that catch up, and there's just no space for us to slow down. And I think teachers would be the first to say it as well, to kind of stop and, you know, connect with the student. Okay, before we move you on, let's find out what's missing, if anything, or what do we need to how should we intervene here to make sure that you can, you know, go on with your cohort, or you know,
Well, that's right. And you know, I think the attrition rate in teachers within the first 5 years of graduating should tell you that the people that went into Teachers College or the Masters of Teaching or whatever course it is worldwide, that went in with a certain notion about what they wanted to do with their life and time and career, quickly find out that those aren't actually the priorities of the system. So if you're, because I don't necessarily class myself as a teacher per se, but as an educator, because I have done educational type things in lots of different ways, but my passion has always remained to help people discover themselves and their own abilities and then put them on that trajectory. But that isn't really in the bureaucracy that is the education system. And that's not just in Australia. But, you know, we have some really good thought leaders leading the charge. And I think that's starting to gain traction. As I say, you can see, you know, the future focused conversation. You can see the project-based learning coming in. You can see that, you know, COVID has certainly highlighted the extraordinary cost of not supporting the well-being and the whole person. And, you know, there's lots of change that still needs to happen, but our little school is probably a step ahead in my mind, in terms of actually being a supportive place that people can come to discover their best attributes and grow those attributes.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think we both have the same life goal, because for me it's the same thing. I just all I want for children and young people is to find a life that they love and to be supported in living that life. And as you know, I completely agree, the HSC just does not set you up for that, and there's so much pressure. And then, you know, I find also being in that university setting, you know, sometimes I have students that are coming to be teachers because there's this pressure on them to do a degree that leads to a job that has a pay, and then, you know, their parents or whatever say, oh, you can talk to kids, or, you know, you're good at explaining things, so you go and do a teaching degree, but it's not necessarily their passion. And it's and I think they're the ones that drop out pretty early. But there is this lack of, I think, in school, you know, I think you're right, in schooling, in like who is not student, but who is this human being that's in front of us, and what is missing in the schooling that we can, you know, help them, guide them to the life that they want to lead, a life they love.
It's interesting because when I was in Teachers College, I had a tutor who was the one that gave me my grades for my practical, you know, sessions, or what a pracs, I think you call them here. And he and I fundamentally disagreed about what education was for. So I was working in all of the schools in low socioeconomic areas, called or English as second language. There was lots of racial issues in the schools, religious issues in the schools. And at the end of the day, whilst he thought education was solely about curriculum, and I feel like education is about people, we came to a head about it when I was teaching a class of year 6 students, so 11, 12 kind of year olds. It was a very challenging environment. Lots of the families were managing drug addiction and homelessness and things like this. And I ran a poetry unit, and this young man who had a very poor reputation in the school, which is a whole nother issue that I have. But anyway,
bookmark. I'll ask you about that later.
Yeah, he was in my class, and we had as a collective found ways of lifting each other up rather than having biased and prejudiced views on each other. And he was a really good poet, and he was writing shape poems and all these different types of poems that we had learned about. And that tutor came in and wanted to fail me on my practical unit because I hadn't been talking enough about things like stanzas and different parts of poetry or different techniques or whatever. And when it came down to the end of my time there, he actually came up to me and was like, I see what you're doing now, because that young man got published as a poet. We submitted some of his work, which had a monetary reward to it, which was quite exciting for him. And his parent came in for parent teacher and was like, I don't know what you have done, but instead of fighting in the streets, he's at the kitchen table writing poems.
Oh my God.
Okay. And that's not about me. That's about the time that I had to offer him an opportunity to express himself in a different way. And it doesn't really matter if he knows about stanzas at that point, because that wasn't the purpose of the exercise.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the fundamental shaping experiences of my early career, where I kind of went, oh, you have to know what your goal is. And very often my goal is to teach the young people how to access the information that they need, or how to express themselves or advocate for themselves, or use those tools, because they can then find any knowledge and content that they want. Yeah.
How did you come to that at such a young, such an early part of your career?
I think it was, my teacher's college experience was after I'd had quite a lot of other educational experiences. I had worked at a therapeutic recreation center as an outdoor educator, which was a fantastic space to work in. And we worked with everything from, newborns to 87-year-olds, I think was the oldest person that came up there. And that was like out of home care, that was autism group homes, that was lots of different walks of life and people that had different goals, and it was therapeutic recreation, so personal goal setting and that sort of thing. So I've always kind of gravitated towards seeing the power and the strengths within a person and trying to highlight those to that individual that may not have seen them themselves for whatever reason. So and then trying to grow those skills. But that experience with the Teachers College kind of was a pinnacle point where I kind of stood back and went, okay, that this is going to be a constant challenge for me in the educational space, because my value system doesn't align with the priorities of that huge bureaucracy.
Mm.
And so I have tended to find myself either in public schools that have principals that allow me to do things the way that I feel like they need to be done, or in independent schools where I have more freedom to lead in a way that I think is the most valuable for the young people that I'm serving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find then you get the same educational outcomes or better anyway? Do you end up having the same academic outcomes, I guess, or are they or not, and it's just a different outcome?
The same academic outcomes as who?
As what so what I kind of find with these different approaches is that often you kind of get blocked in doing them. But if you do them the way the bureaucracy wants you to, the academic outcome for that student is not great. Right. But if you do them the way you want to do it, then the academic outcome kind of fits what the bureaucracy wants anyway.
Yeah.
Is that what you kind of find?
I do. And I think that's because if you acknowledge the whole person and they have moments of success in whatever it is, they, like we know from research that those successes and social successes and well-being have a massive impact in how you can even access academic tasks. If you're not well and you don't feel like you belong and you can't make meaning, and your adrenal system is in hyperdrive, you're not going to access an academic task. So you've got to get that right first, and then you can go, hey, let's build your competence in this area, because that seems to be a good place to start with you. And that place is different for everybody. So at our school, we run a self-determination model. So we're really obviously focused on relatedness. But we also build in autonomy opportunities, decision making, choice making, problem solving, all of those things. And then we're trying to build the young people's competence through the ASDAN challenges, because they can address that challenge over the challenges are quite open, so they can address them kind of on whatever sort of topic they want, if that makes sense. But they can also deep dive if it's a particular interest of theirs, or they can just meet the acceptance criteria. And be done with it. So everybody deep dives somewhere. Everybody has an interest somewhere. And if I think about myself as a student, I was really good at school. School was easy peasy. I had straight A's and I didn't try. Because I knew what the teacher wanted to hear, and I could provide it. But the teachers that made a difference in my life were the ones that went, you're cruising. You're not actually doing anything. You're not stretching yourself. You're not learning. And so, while you looked at me and were like, oh, she's a straight A student, haha, aren't we a good education system churning out a straight A student? I was going to do that anyway. Right. But then the other student that was a D, that had this really good teacher that I had one year in grade 6 or grade 4 or whatever it was, went from a D to an A. That's substantial growth. That's the kid you should be celebrating. And that's the kid you can go, these opportunities that I provided were the opportunities that helped them find their way. So those were the teachers that were like, hey, Andrea, I know you're really interested in Egyptians. I think it was in year 6. I was like obsessed with Egyptians. And whilst the rest of this class was doing a task on whatever it was, I was allowed to do Egyptians and really deep dive. And I made like a 3D model, and I had mummified things, and I was like, but that's that's what needs to happen. We're not all the same, and we know that teams in the workplace are stronger when they are diverse.
Yes.
When we celebrate and use those diversities, when we celebrate and apply those different talents in the right way, that's good leadership. Yes. So let's do that instead of going, we all need to be the same and we all need to accomplish this and we all need to do it in this way. Because we don't. And that's not what the world is like. So I don't know why we're priming kids with these pressure cooker systems to be all the same when that's not what we want in the workspace.
Anyway,
it doesn't make any sense.
I know, it doesn't make any sense to me either. Well, I'm with you.
I'm ranting now, I'm sorry.
I don't think you're ranting at all. It's fantastic. I agree with everything you say. And so many things, but it's like compliance doesn't mean engagement. I say that to my students all the time. Just because you have a nice little good girl sitting there doing her work doesn't mean she's engaged in the learning, doesn't mean she's really learning something that they actually don't already know. They're just recording. You already know. So how do you know that this student is actually, you're extending them, as you say, or you're really teaching them something? And I know it's like I was thinking about NAPLAN and today, as you do as an educator while you're driving, and I was thinking.
I try hard not to think about NAPLAN, but okay.
But it's like it just doesn't. I was thinking about. Actually what I was thinking about was, those literacy and numeracy tests that everyone gets all angsty about, how Australia compares to those tests.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking what I wanted to know is like, what do, mathematicians in practice say about our students' ability? Because maybe we're okay. Like, why are we comparing ourselves to like a test ranking? Shouldn't we be looking at the workforce, as you say, and saying, well, what's the workforce saying about our humans? Ability to do maths or ability to communicate, and that's really where we should be targeting our education is, what's our society like? Are people happy? Are they fulfilled? Are they contributing? Are they innovating? And if that's all working, well then okay, let's do something different. Let's keep school as it is. But if that's not working, well that should be our indicator, not some literacy ranking test thing.
Yes, that's true. I think the other thing about those tests is that they are, again, a moment in time. And if you're good at test taking, great. If you're not good at test taking, that doesn't actually mean you don't have the skills necessarily. It means that you're not good at test taking, or you had a terrible morning and whatever happens, and now this is what it looks like on the page. But the other thing is, when you're comparing those kinds of rankings across the world, there's lots of different cultural elements that impact those sorts of things. And I think there are a couple of schools in the Wollongong area that have been doing projects about that, what we teach in maths at school, how does that translate into the real world or a career in maths or whatever. And so same with science. So we have a wonderful STEM professional that works with us that's helping us make those connections, so that when we're doing something in the classroom, he's helping us go, and that's what this looks like in the real world. And that's what that looks like when you're doing these kinds of experiments, or kind of generalizing and globalizing the things that we're doing. So I think that's starting to happen, and I think it's obviously really important, because how many people do you know, certainly in my generation, the people that left school didn't feel prepared for anything. And teachers are a great example of people that are not prepared for their actual job. So they finished teachers college, and they don't know anything about the actual job. They know how to run a curriculum, they know how to maybe program, or they've had a half-hour course on behavior management and maybe 45 minutes on special needs or something like this, some, I don't know, schmozzle of things. But are they actually ready to do the ins and outs of what a day-to-day career as an educator is? And I would say probably in those first 2 years, depending on who your mentor teachers are and what space you get into, will really determine whether you stay in education, number one, and number two, what kind of educator you're going to be.
Yeah.
I was really fortunate because I had very early on, I had some wonderful mentors who just admired the young people that they were working with, from kindergarten right through right through high school and into adult education. And I think probably being mentored by people with that value set probably prepared me more for, you know, working with families, managing all the things that kids bring into a classroom space that have nothing to do with books or curricula or any of those things, but the actual life things that they bring with them. Yeah.
And assistant principal, I interviewed, one of the things he said for the podcast, one of the things he said is that if you don't love people, you're in the wrong job. Because
that is very true.
He said kids are just little people and you have to love each and every one of them.
Yeah.
And because they're kids, they're going to stuff up, and you're going to teach them something and they'll get it, and then the next day they might get it wrong. And that's just developmentally where a human is at. And
I don't even think that's about kids. That's just humans in general, you know, like the same thing when you're teaching your teachers or your SLSOs or the well-being officers, you know, we all have to practice and make meaning. And people do that in very, very different ways at different times.
Yeah.
So some people might need to be revisited to it a number of times in a number of different ways before they grasp on, and others will go and seek out the ways that they prefer to get more information about something and make meaning on their own, and then come to the table and go, I know all these things. And you're like, oh, well, and then you've got to figure out that zone of proximal development, because yesterday they were all on, you know, nobody knew anything. And today this person has gone off and chased all this information and is now well versed and needs to be expanded and extended and applying that knowledge in different ways. So I think that's true across the whole, well, that would be true for our well-being team as well as our educational team. But, you know, we try to practice unconditional positive regard. So people can be really challenging and, you know, rub you the wrong way at certain moments, but it's trying to go, okay, and being, you know, that radically candid with them. This is why this is challenging for me, and this is what I need to have happen. And actually practicing that repair and that restorative kind of process as well, which is, there's a lot of learning to be had through that process. But it's not like unconditional positive regard doesn't mean whatever they did yesterday you just ignore and start again. It means you rectify it, repair it, and start from that moment on with unconditional positive regard. Yeah.
Incredible. What a great thing. That's great. And just, that reminds me back to what you were saying before about educational reputation of students, because one of the things I say to my student teachers is to not listen to the gossip that teachers do in the staff room about other students. Pay any attention, because a student will show up for you, might show up for you differently, than it will another. And like if they come into your classroom and you're, listening to them as if they're the bad kid, because
through that lens,
then that's what's going to show up.
Yeah.
But if you, open your heart and you get to know the student as they are, or, be open, then who knows who's going to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very true, because if I had listened to what they told me about that young person, that was a poet, I would have been terrified, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I would have been like, oh my God, is he going to stab me or something? Like it was pretty harsh. And you're exactly right. If somebody walked into a space with a judgment on me, I would feel that judgment.
Yeah.
I might not understand what it is or why it is, but I would certainly feel that judgment. Yeah. And that's going to put me off, which then fulfills that prophecy, like, oh yeah, they're going to do this. And then, well, look, yeah.
Because that's the relationship you're giving them.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that we don't do each other any favors as educators by engaging in that conversation in that light. So I worked in it was an autism unit attached to a public school. And there was a lot of conversation about in deficit model kind of chat, which I don't comply to the medical model or the deficit model at all. So, we constantly talked about reframing. So, oh, that kid is like, so, obsessed with these facts and how useless and how silly and rah, 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 and, going on and on about it. And if we reframe that, he's got incredible attention to detail. He can recite things that he's only seen one time to the letter, and actually got a job writing credits for a TV station. So that thing that was like so silly and so useless, and why does he keep annoying us with that, actually turned into a job for that young person. So we're not actually helping anybody, let alone, it doesn't feel good. Like you don't feel good as a person when you're constantly in that negative chat, that doesn't, it's not uplifting or motivational to go to work if you're gonna trash talk everybody. So
all the time as well.
Yeah.
So you must have some pretty amazing teachers that work with you then. So I'm just wondering about the teachers that work for you and the wellbeing, so all of that staff. I'm already in love with them all. I talk about what they do. And so how, I don't know, tell me about them. Who applies to teach with you? What sort of things are you looking for in a school like that? And what kind of untraining maybe you need to do?
We often have people apply to us who probably are also in educational recovery, where that mainstream system has found them disillusioned, I think. They also generally have a passion for young people. We are very careful to not hire saviors, because that is not our model.
Unpack that a bit. What does that look like?
Well, we're not lifeguards. Like we're not going to rescue you from your life situation, or we're not going to rescue you from anything. We're here to enable you and empower you, to help you forge your own path, and we will support you and pack around you, but in a guiding way that provides opportunities, but you really have to want to take them. You know, I'm not going to, like, some of our young people have very complex home lives, and we can't save you, nor will that actually help you grow or move beyond that generational situation either. So yeah, we're very careful that when we're doing interviews, if anybody's using savior language, you know, I feel so bad for them. I just want to help them, you know, have a better life or whatever. Well, yeah, we want them to find themselves a better life. Absolutely. We want to do that. But I personally, as Andrea, can't give you a better life. Like that's not my job. I can't actually do that. What I can do is give you some tools and help you use those tools so that you can find a path for yourself. So yeah, I think most of our teachers are quite passionate about skilling up and arming young people with not only those learning tools like literacy and numeracy, but also those social emotional tools. Who are you? How, can you reflect on yourself? Can you regulate yourself? Can you relate to other people? Can you fix it when it's broken? You know, that sort of thing. So I think all of our teachers have that passion for the whole student, not necessarily, I mean, we do have curriculum specialists in different areas that are super passionate about their area of study, but that's not to say that that's the priority, and they understand that the young person has to come first, and they have to be well and regulated and happy in the space to then open the channels to learning.
Yeah, I was a bit of an obsessed curriculum specialist for drama for, you know, when I first started out, and could never understand if students didn't like drama. I was like, why not? It's like the best.
Everybody loves drama.
And so once I kind of got, oh no, I'm not teaching drama, I'm teaching students, I'm teaching young people. Yeah. I became a much better teacher, and a much better drama teacher too, actually, I have to say. As well.
That's right. Like, I think it's really helpful when you're passionate about your subject, because that comes across to the young people and might excite them and invigorate them.
Yes.
But again, when you're in educational recovery, you have to get right in and of yourself so that you can have a mind that is calm and open for that growth in the academic kind of realm. If you wish.
Yeah. And are there other things about the school that are different that help you set up the student? I was just thinking, like, do you have uniforms? How do you start the day? How does a school day look? Is that the same or?
No. So we don't have uniforms. We have a dress code. So, you know, obviously we don't want offensive logos or something like this. And our dress code is pretty much come dressed in things that don't restrict you from participating.
Okay. So
if we have a PE or a sport life and rec class, and we're going to play something, don't come in a skirt and heels or something, you know, be ready to participate. The other thing, we're all on first name basis. So we don't go by Mr. and Mrs. anything. And we have a homeroom session at the beginning of every day, and that's that social emotional learning time. But it's also designed to get the young people to think beyond themselves and to give beyond themselves. So there's a charitable element in there where they might be working on some fundraising, or the other year after the bushfires, one of the classes went out and tied up fruit on coat hangers, I think it was, to feed the bats, because the bats had lost all of their food resources and things like that. So and also celebration days or acknowledgement days. So Reconciliation Week this week, the homerooms have been working on understanding what that is and acknowledging things in different ways. So we always start like that. There's always soft landings for students that are struggling in different ways. Then we have the individual learning profiles, and the ready to learn plans. So students are really treated as individuals because they are individuals, and they all have different needs at different times. So we have very skilled SLSOs, or student learning support officers, who can help a student re-regulate and get back engaged, or take a walk and talk with them if they need a little time out, set them up in a different space if that's required. And then we have the well-being team, who are super well versed in that kind of motivational interviewing and building rapport and connecting in with other services and families, and so it's a really supportive environment that is designed to help young people feel safe and get connected, so that they can grow that competence and autonomy in a productive way. Because sometimes our young people have autonomy, but it's not the autonomy that they have, or that, I'm making decisions and I'm choosing and I'm problem solving, but it's not the autonomy that has the boundaries in it. So what I mean by that is that our young people still require boundaries of, this is how you conduct yourself in this space, and you can choose within that how you apply to that work task, or which job you're going to do first, or whatever it is. But free range choice in everything is often not super productive. So we still have those very clear structures and the trauma sensitive practice that keeps the routine going. So it's predictable. They know what's coming. They know what to expect. We teach all of the curricula. So not just the academic curricula, but the social curriculum, the cultural curriculum, the behavioral curriculum. And we teach that and practice it. And that's how we maintain and grow young people that are going to be able to thrive in different environments. Because the thing that I think schools like ours are in danger of is bubble wrapping.
Yeah, right.
We don't want to bubble wrap young people.
Yeah.
We are a protective environment, sure, but we are a protective environment with the ultimate goal of empowering the young people to make their own choices that are positive and building a future. So we don't rescue.
Yeah.
Don't bubble wrap.
Yeah.
But we do pack around.
Yeah.
And sometimes that stuff that we pack around is more intensive than other times, depending on what's going on for the young person. So there are periods of time where we might have a lot of support involved. And then when it's okay, we'll move that support back out to the outer circles, because that young person's got it now.
Yeah, right.
So we kind of go in and out as needed, but yeah.
Just sounds so incredible. I feel like, Andrea, we could talk for a very long time. I think I might have to come down and visit your school.
I think you should.
I would love to. So it was great to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. It was just fascinating to hear, all about your experience in the school. It just sounds absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was fun to talk.
Yes. Right. Okay. And everyone else, I will see you next week for another episode of Teaching Heroes. Bye.